And welcome. This is the Planning and Land Use Management Committee. I'm Councilmember Weezer. I've been joined by Councilmember Englander and Councilmember Cedillo. And on item number 10, we will note and file that item. Item number 4, a motion to instruct planning to report back on feasibility of amending hours of operation of businesses within the Colorado Boulevard specific plan. We'll put that on consent with approval of my colleagues. Item number 7, a report from CHC recommending historical cultural monument status for the Charles C. Hurd residence. We will put that on consent. Item number 8, historical cultural monument status for 800 South Robertson on consent. A card on that? Okay, it's all right. Pull that off consent. You're the applicant, and you wish to speak. We're putting on the consent to support. That's okay? Oh, behind you. You're okay then? You don't need to speak? No. Or okay. So on consent, number 8 as well. And number 9, historical culture monument status for a commercial building at 11 North Broadway. We will continue that to August 19th. So that leaves us with item number 1. If you could read that into the record, please.
Item 1, Councilman, is the appointment of Ms. Jacqueline Orozco to the South LA APC.
Welcome, Ms. Orozco.
Hello, good afternoon.
If you could please tell us a little bit about yourself and your interest in serving on this commission.
Yes. Good afternoon, Councilmember Huizar, Councilmember Cedillo, and Councilmember Englander. My name is Jacqueline Orozco, and I stand before you as an appointee to the South LA Area Planning Commission. To share a little bit about myself, I was born and raised in Watts, and despite growing up with limited recourses, managed to navigate through college and law school. I am a proud graduate of Markham Middle School and Jordan High School, so I'm definitely representing the area. And because I grew up in the area, I understand firsthand the hardships of working families, and I truly believe that I was blessed to have the opportunity to go on to pursue higher education. And as a result of those experiences, I have a very strong conviction to make sure that I utilize the knowledge and the skills that I've developed towards promoting more prosperous communities throughout South LA. I believe that land use and planning have a direct impact in our quality of life. I know that many times when people look towards South LA, they see a number of challenges within the community. But when I think of my community, I see a wealth of diversity, I see a history of perseverance, and I see opportunities. So I am humbled to be before you and humbled by this opportunity to serve on the South LA Area Planning Commission. My hope is to continue to foster greater community involvement and participation in all of these processes. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. And at least on my end, I will certainly enthusiastically support your nomination. I've seen your work ethic, your commitment that you have when you served as a field rep for my office at the Los Angeles School District. What I appreciate most about you is that you've always kept in contact with your community, and now this is yet another way to serve the area of South Los Angeles and continue to improve the quality of life there for individuals. So welcome. And I was going to ask you, of all the jobs you ever had, which one was your favorite, but I'll...
I thank you to this day for taking a risk and giving an opportunity to a young idealistic college grad. It was definitely laid the foundation for all of my other work experiences. And after working at the school district, I definitely feel prepared to take anything on. So
you're no longer idealistic.
No, I am still idealistic. There's a little bit level of realism that has set in, but I am still idealistic.
Okay. Well, so they say that some of us, the older we get, the more conservative we get. But at least if we could stay idealistic, if that is even true. But anyway, any other questions or comments? No.
I was going to ask you the same thing. Who was your favorite boss?
Well, thank you, and thank you for
Thank
your
you.
service. This will be in council what day?
Next Tuesday, August 12th.
Okay, so with that, we will approve this item without objection and see you in council.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next item.
Item 2, Councilman, is a communication from the mayor relative to the appointment of Ms. Stevie Stern to the South LA APC.
Welcome, and if you could share a little of your background and your interest in serving on this commission.
Certainly. Thank you for letting me be here today. I'm very excited to be considered to be appointed to the South LA Area Planning Commission. I am a born and raised LA girl. I grew up in the San Fernando Valley. I went to college at UCLA. I've been working in the arts as a writer and a performer. About 20 years ago, my husband and I moved to the West Adams district. And love the historic neighborhoods, love the multicultural, multi-diversity neighborhoods, and became my neighborhood block club president, and dealt with planning land use issues on behalf of my block club. I then moved into being a founding member of the United Neighborhoods Neighborhood Council. Served for the past 11 years as its president, and furthered my personal education about planning and land use issues by not only serving my residential neighbors, but also serving our business stakeholders and new development. My area has incredible residential areas with historic homes. Our main corridors are ripe for development. We've had some wonderful development that we've worked with developers on. We look for maintaining our quality of life, healthy streets, getting people out on their bicycles, pedestrian-friendly development. And I really look forward to learning and growing and bringing my experience to the commission.
Great, thank you. And I was in the West Adams area just a couple of days ago, and it's I hear a lot about it, but it wasn't until I really drove in there and went through some of the smaller streets there, came to appreciate the beautiful historic architecture of many of the homes there. And just curious, is there an HPOZ there in the?
There are about 5 or 6 of them.
5 or 6 of them.
Yeah, we've worked really hard to try and preserve our residential neighborhoods, and it's been an amazing effect. It's also been very challenging.
Yes, it has. Well, thank you, and thank you for your willingness to serve. I think your longstanding activism in the area and your knowledge about the neighborhoods and working and volunteering in different capacities are really going to lend a hand to this. I once served on the East Area Planning Commission, and you see all these local issues come to this level at some point in the area commissions. You know, when I served in it was the first time the commissions were just established. We were trying to find a way as to exactly what our role is, but people really sometimes underestimate the role and importance of the area planning commissions. It's at the ground level, things that really matter to our constituents, and in you making those decisions, as well as other people appointed to this commission. So thank you for your willingness to serve and being involved in these issues. Any other questions or comments? No. Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Cedillo, for the record, says go Bruins, so we'll put that in the record. And when's this coming to council?
Next Tuesday also.
All right, we'll see you in council.
My birthday.
Thank you. Without objection. Thank you. Next item.
Item 3, Councilman, is a communication from the mayor relative to the appointment of Ms. Kimberly Chemerinsky to the to the Central APC.
Welcome.
Hi, thank you. I'm very excited to be appointed to the Central Area Planning Commission. My name is Kim Chemerinsky, and I am an attorney with Alston & Bird in downtown Los Angeles. Prior to joining Alston & Bird, I graduated from Duke Law School. I completed a federal clerkship, and I taught at Duke Law School for 2 years in the Wrongful Convictions Clinic. Since moving to LA, I've lived in both downtown and Carthay Circle, and I'm very excited to get more involved in the areas in the issues facing those areas and the rest of the central area. I'm very excited about this opportunity for several reasons. Among them, the ability to give back to a city that has given so much to me and so much to my family. I think that the public service component of this position is what most attracted me to it. And also to continue the strong reputation of the city's government in ensuring that individuals and the public believe that they're able to be heard and that the issues that are important to them are being carefully considered and according to the procedures that are in place. So thank you very much for this appointment, and I look forward to serving with you and serving the city.
Great, thank you. And thank you with your willingness to serve along with what others as well have a very busy schedule, and certainly as a litigation attorney. Prior to Alston Bird coming to Los Angeles, they actually merged with a firm called Weston Benchouf Rochford Rubalcaba, where I used to work before I got
Yes, I had heard that
before I got
Weston
recruited
Benchouf has
to,
at least one distinguished alum.
Thank you. It's a great firm, and I know how busy you all can be working there, and your willingness to serve on this commission should be commended. And thank you, and welcome to downtown Los Angeles as well. One of the most exciting areas in the country, I say, in terms of redevelopment and development. So
Definitely,
lots
really
happening.
is.
You can have a lot of issues before you. Some of the most interesting urban planning issues, I think, in the country are going to be before your commission. So any questions or comments? No.
Yes, he's my father-in-law.
Oh, I did not know that. That's the first thought that came to me. You're really, yeah, okay.
I am. He does. He has 3 sons. I'm married to the best one. He does. One is 21, or one is 18. He acts a little too much like he's 21. Another is 27, and the oldest is 31.
Hello to one of my favorite bosses. Speaking of bosses, Ed Casey. Tell him I said hello.
I will be sure to do that.
Yeah, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, thanks.
Without objection, we'll move this item to Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Okay, great. Thank you. So ordered. Thank you very much. Next item.
The next item, Councilman, is a motion by Councilman Labange and O'Farrell. It's instructing planning and engineering to make amendments to a track map on Rowena Avenue in CD4.
Okay, what number is that?
Number 5,
Oh,
Councilman.
number 5. Okay. And there's been a request by the council office to move this to on consent. We'll move this on consent. If you could just speak with the city attorney's office prior to getting to council, that's our only request from this committee, and let you guys figure that out. Okay. Thank you very much.
And Councilman, we're asking rather that you approve the motion, but also read into the record a directive to instruct the Bureau of Engineering and Planning to remove any street widening requirements.
Okay.
And the council office is aware, and the city attorney's office is aware.
Okay, excellent. We'll move that item to council with no objections, so ordered. Next item.
The next item, Councilman, is item 6, which is a quarterly report back from planning regarding the Recode LA.
So welcome. I believe Tim Rothman and Eric Lopez from Code Studies section will present this item. Right. I do have, well, we'll let you present the item and tell us where we are in the process and see where we go from here. Thank you.
Certainly. Again, this is Tom Rothman from the Planning Department, the Code Studies section, and we're here today to give the committee a quarterly update on where we are with the Recode LA project, and also to present to you the code evaluation, which is the first big deliverable of the project, which really sets the roadmap for the remainder of this project. Okay. So I'll just dive right in and catch everybody up. I know it's been a while since we've been to Plum, so just quickly why we're working on this rewrite of the city's zoning code. So we've all seen this graphic before. We have a 1946 zoning code that has grown up over the last 67 years, from the little pamphlet to the big book. The nomenclature and the essential organization structure of the book has remained the same, yet we've added to it and added to it until it's become quite an unwieldy document to understand. Another main reason why we're working on rewriting the zoning code is that we've also been interpreting the zoning code through a series of memos and memorandums throughout the years that sort of have refined the zoning code, yet have never really been incorporated into the book. So we want to really cull through all of these documents to make sure our zoning code is as complete and accurate as possible. The main reason why we need to rewrite our zoning code is that we have a citywide zoning code that unfortunately does not cover most of the city any longer. Since we have very limited tools in the zoning code, we have through the years created other ways to get the zoning we have in our policy documents through ways like supplemental use districts, specific plans, qualifying conditions, and other things. So as you see in that map of LA on the right, the darkly shaded areas are parts of the city that need where a developer or a project has to look into multiple places to find out what the actual zoning is. Most cities don't operate that way. We'd like to sort of cull through all of those documents to have one repository for all of this information. So quickly, where are we today? So I've said this before, we have 3 main deliverables as part of the Recode project. We have a citywide zoning code, so the rewrite of the actual book, that's the citywide zoning code, a complete repository of all of our zones. We're also going to propose a downtown development code, so a separate actual zoning code that will relate only to the Central City and Central City North community plan areas. And lastly, we're going to have an interactive web-based code, a really exciting part of this project, where users of the zoning code won't have to actually cull through the multiple pages of a zoning code. You can query the right questions and get out the specifics of a zoning code that pertains to the property that's the question. So you don't have to really look through our general provisions, our exceptions section, all these different places, and hopefully catch everything. This web-based code will be very interactive and will enable the user to get out specifically what he or she needs. So on the bottom here is our timeline. We started about a year ago. We launched the project in 2013. Here we are in 2014, and I'm going to be presenting in a few minutes the zoning code evaluation. That's this document. I think all of your offices have it, and we also have some extra copies in the hall today if anybody would like a copy. Next year, we hope to propose the downtown development code. That's the main deliverable, to have a zoning code that pertains just to downtown. In 2 years from now, we want to have that web-based code finalized so that we have a really good idea of how this is actually going to work with our users. And lastly, in 2017, we hope to have our final citywide zoning code ready to be reviewed for adoption. Why are we doing a new zoning code? Well, we have all of these different variations of zones that we've created through the years, really high-quality zones, but they're really scattered throughout our documents. They're in our zoning code. They're in other documents. We need one repository, so we need to create more zoning options that better address all of our community visions. We've got some great plans out there, but it's really hard for our community planners to match up what their policies are saying with what's available to them in the toolbox. Big point of this project. And then we're also going to be incorporating the overlays into base zones that will address all these inconsistencies. So what we're doing now is we're reviewing all of these multiple places where all of our zoning regulations are housed so that we can create a complete list of all of our zones. And up to today, our latest estimate is that we have about 1,300 zones on the ground today, even though we only have about 30 to 40 zones in the book. In reality, we've got hundreds, over 1,000 zones on the ground with all of our Q conditions and our delimitations and our supplemental use districts, all of these very nuanced ways of zoning, but they're scattered. Another main point of the process or this project would be to start streamlining our case processing. We've done a lot over the last few years with our multiple approvals ordinance. And we have a little bit farther to go. We've got lots of processes, still over 70 different processes that have different time frames, different appeal routes. We've got multiple things going on at different times. There's really no need for all of this bifurcated rules. We'd like to identify what's common and sort of make one list of processes, and also to incorporate our standardly used conditions of approval into our zoning code so we don't have to rewrite them all the time. And then where are we now? What have we done since we last met here in March? Well, we have had 7 more regional forums on our code evaluation document. which we'll get into in a little while. We also those seven regional forums were held throughout the city in all of our area planning commission areas, North Valley, South Valley. We've been to every one of them. We also held, for those who couldn't make it to an actual location, we held a computer-based listening session where it was very interactive, where people could log in to our website and ask us questions directly. It was really very, very helpful. We've launched our project website. We launched it a little while ago before March, but now we've got a much more refined website. Please visit it, recode.la. Gives you up-to-date information on where we are in the project. We've got a series of tools on there, Map It. We also have something called Markup, which was really very cutting edge for the planning department, where we posted our latest document on the website, and we allowed all users to give us their comments and start little comments and blogs about individual components of the document you'll be hearing about. We've been to the City Planning Commission 3 times to get their sign-off and approval of our direction with the code evaluation report. Some really great conversations came out of that. And we've also been going to all different types of organizations and giving them updates. We've been to the Central City Association, Valley Industrial Commercial Association. We've been to anybody who wants to hear from us has heard from us. We've been to neighborhood groups, so it's been a really as transparent and iterative process as we can make it. Last November, we set up a zoning advisory committee, and I'm happy to have 3 members of that 21-member panel here today. It's been really helpful. We really talk about all of the issues that we'd like to see in a modern 21st century zoning code. It's been really helpful. They've been getting presentations lately, and we've gone over the code evaluation report with them. And we've heard from a variety of people who can tell us the pros and cons of development in the city. And we also have a technical advisory committee that's made up of city folks. Make sure that we're not overstepping any boundaries with the zoning code, and we have all of the departments in check and on the same page with the intent of Recode. As part of the web-based code, we are moving very quickly to have a really helpful, user-friendly interface with the zoning code and the users. So these are just some highlights of what we hope our computer version will look like and our phone version of the zoning code. So in the future, we're hoping that people will be able to pull up the zoning code on their phones and find out what they can build or what they can expect to see on a certain piece of property. Really helpful. So we've pretty much have the architecture of that code finished. We have an idea of what we want to see. We've got our great visuals. We really like the way it's looking so far. We're going to be making presentations to our zoning advisory committee and to the management of the planning department in the next few weeks to really get buy-in. And then we've got a proof of concept. So generally the whole idea of how this is moving has been approved internally so far. So these are just some really, I don't know if anybody's used the legal system of looking through our zoning code. It's how we access our zoning code today on the internet. It's all of the information's there. It's just not as helpful as we'd like it to be. I think this is about 10 steps forward from where we are today. What's next with your project? We have an approach report coming out after this is finalized, after we have approval from the City Council on the code evaluation. We'd like to move forward with an approach report to actually how the zoning code will be laid out. The Downtown Development Code, as I said earlier today, will be up for review next year, early next year, so that we can have an idea of what kind of tools we'd like to see to implement the Central City and Central City North community plan areas. And then we're moving forward still with our web-based system so that it follows the process. So we have the web-based architecture following the implementation or the construction of our new zoning code. And then I'm going to talk a little briefly about what this document is in front of everybody today. This is our code evaluation, and it's been out since March 7th. It's been out for public review. We had it out for public review for about 3 months, and then we went to the City Planning Commission with it. And what this basically does is lay out the roadmap for how we're going to be working on this project and what we'd like to see in a 21st century zoning code. So this really it outlines the key directions. There's really no actual policies in here, but it does talk about what we'd like to see changed and how we'd like to see this new code implemented. It also talks about how we're going to work on the downtown code and how we're going to implement the web-based code. So it's a very comprehensive yet easy to read, nice document. It's very magazine style. You can read through it. You can go to the questions and sections that most interest you. And I'm going to lay out quickly. There are 8 chapters in it. I'll go over them briefly, and there's a more in-depth version of this I can go into, but I'd like to talk briefly about what this really does cover. This is the breadth of the entire direction. We have a whole chapter based upon distinct neighborhoods, how we can better preserve and protect our single-family and our multifamily neighborhoods. We have a section that talks about housing affordability and diversity and how we can expand other options to incentivize affordable housing. We have a section dedicated to centers and corridors where it talks about urban design standards and how we can expand our guidelines throughout the city and strengthen our corridors, which is really a basis on our framework, how we can connect our regional centers, our transit nodes through other transit corridors, how we can create pedestrian-friendly neighborhoods. Transportation choice is another section really about parking and transit access, very interesting section. Chapter 5 talks about jobs and innovation, how we can best preserve our manufacturing zones and how we can have tools to sort of foster different types of innovative manufacturing. So that's really helpful for keeping LA on top. And 6 talks about downtown specifically, how we can keep the momentum of downtown going with creating a really strong core. So it talks about what the specifics of downtown are and why it's a unique place in Los Angeles. 7, a healthy city, talks about incorporating the recent policies of a plan for a healthy LA and other policies we have about urban agriculture and truck farming and how we can create a much more robust city. And lastly, the last chapter really talks about how we want to see the new zoning code look. It's called Code Delivery. Background of this, we went 3 times to the City Planning Commission. We had really good conversations. They were really pretty happy with the direction of this was, and we made some changes, and they were transmitted to this body recently. And when we went to the City Planning Commission, we did highlight 4 key policy objectives that would be policy changes in a new zoning code, and we also highlighted 30 comments we received, or 30 conceptual comments where we aggregated many of the comments into one comment. We received 635 public comments. Many of them were really helpful, and so we culled them down to about 30 that were the most helpful, and we've incorporated them into the final evaluation report. And then the City Planning Commission, at the end of all of these hearings, really talked about how are we going to migrate a new zoning code scheme from what we have today into what we want to have tomorrow. And I'm not going to go through all these, but there were comments about that we are adding to each chapter. So chapter 1 really didn't have very many comments, but we broke it down into each chapter, how we're going to modify this final document. We had a lot of comments about housing affordability and diversity. We had some comments about urban design, transportation choice. Obviously, that really garnered a lot of conversation about parking and transit requirements. Jobs and innovation. We had conversations about expanding our transfer of floor area regulations, our adaptive reuse regulations, expanding green opportunities for the city. We had some comments. And lastly, we had some final comments about how the public would like to see and have access to a citywide zoning code. Last thing I'd like to cover today, I know I'm giving you a lot of information, but this is really important. So how do we move from a new zoning scheme how do we move from our old zoning scheme to a new zoning scheme? And that's a lot of conversation, so it's best to talk about it early, and we can keep coming back and giving you feedback on it. But we propose to have new zoning names to promote the type of city we'd like to have. So what we envision here is that a new zoning code is going to create a new series of zones that can be used through our community plan processes, but we're also going to have to go and convert our existing zones into a nomenclature that can be easily understood in a new zoning code. So what we're proposing is, once this code is adopted, that we globally convert all of the zones in the city to a new scheme. So our zones that we have on the ground today are being sifted through, so all of those supplemental use districts and queue conditions can be condensed into one zone. The new zones will be implemented as the community plans get updated. For example, our current zoning has several layers of regulation, as I said earlier. We've got the queues, the CDOs. We're going through those. We may create many, many more zones in the book, but again, I said we've got over 1,300 on the ground today. We'd like to sift through these, cull them down, and we're calling them bridge zones, so a bridge so that we can get to our new zoning code. And this is an example we've brought up for you. It's a parcel that we have on the books today in West LA. It's along Wilshire Boulevard. It's got a Q condition. The base zone is a C4. The height district is a 2. And it's got a commercial design overlay. So that means that anybody who really wants to know what they can build on this property has to look in a variety of places in addition to their general provisions and their exceptions section. So here's 5 different areas that you'd have to look. You'd have to look in the supplemental use district to find out what your the interface between the public and private realms are. You have to look at your Q condition to find out how we have fine-tuned the sign regulations for this parcel. The base zone, the C2, talks about what are the permitted uses. The height district talks about the height and the FAR. And then the general provisions talk about everything else, the parking, the open space, the landscaping. What we're proposing to do is make it much simpler, put all of those requirements either into the zone or into the general provisions. That's what other cities do. These zones will have many more zones, but at least they will be all in one place. And we have a vision here of what we'd like to see the document look like. So instead of looking through different sections of our code, you can come to one place and see a nice graphic, maybe 2 or 3 pages per zone, to get a general idea of what you can build, what uses are allowed, what your setbacks are. Finishing up now, but so in a new code, we're going to have a section for the bridge zones because we have to get to the new zoning code, and then we're going to have our new zones created. As we go through our community plan process and are able to implement the new zones, the bridge zones will eventually, as planned, go away. We will have no use for the bridge zones to remain in the zoning code. The new zones will be our final repository where our community planners can update their community plans. Visual in areas where we're not doing community plannings on day 1 of the new zoning code, we're going to need to do the zone conversion to the bridge zone, and then as that community plan gets underway, we'll do another zone change to the zones we like. In areas where on the bottom there, where we're doing community planning, such as in downtown and in Boyle Heights, we don't need to go through the bridge zone process. We can go right to the new zone. So we're going to have a nice set of tools for the planners to use. A slide. I know that was a lot of information, but we really thought we could get through it. I know I spoke quickly, but we could get through it quickly and open the floor up to conversations and discussion.
Thank you. And I know that this came to us via the City Planning Commission. There's some recommendations that were set there, but we don't have the whole package before us today, correct? Or it's not clear what they recommended versus what was in your original package?
There, in the transmittal memo, I believe there was a series, like 2 pages of actual text changes to the code evaluation.
Oh, okay.
I can get you a copy. Again, this is really just a roadmap. This is not about regulations. This is really just about setting the course. But there were some minor changes. Okay. Generally, they approved the idea of the code evaluation, but there were some changes in it.
In the supplementary report, it has an appendix with some edited language. Does this language represent word crafted by the City Planning Commission, or?
Those were the changes that the commission made.
Those were the changes.
I think
okay.
I think this may have been modified even further, but these were the changes that the commission made, talking more about affordable housing, talking about access to transit. But those essentially were the changes that we made in the code evaluation report.
Okay. Now, let's assume that we adopt this. What's next? I mean, this is actually, because these things are called directions, and they turn into specific policy recommendations, or when does the policy recommendations come back to us, or you just go and do this and then it has to come back at some point, correct?
Oh, right. It's going to come back at the end of the day, it's going to come back in 3 years as a final citywide zoning code, and next year as part of the downtown code. We're going to be coming back on a quarterly update, give you feedback on how we're incorporating it. But again, these are just our roadmap. So once this is approved and signed off on by City Council, we're going to start actually writing a new zoning code.
Okay.
So as piece by piece comes, we'll get your feedback, but we will not be requesting a final adoption until we have a final zoning code for you.
Okay.
Councilman, if I may, part of the experience our consultants have had in other cities was coming with this early diagnosis of some of the issues we find in the existing zoning code and bringing that to the policymakers and saying, here's how we're going to attack our zoning code for Los Angeles, and giving you kind of our collective best thinking so that when we do come down the road, people say, hey, why don't we look at this issue in my district, or what about this other issue we saw? So it's very comprehensive, but obviously this can't cure cancer, and so we want to make sure that we've kind of identified the problem correctly and accurately, and that the decision makers are aware of what the new zoning tools can and can't do, and that we just have that kind of public conversation and get people excited about working with us and continuing through the public process it takes to get buy-in to bring this to full council, hopefully with a lot of support.
Okay, any questions or comments? Mr. Englander? We'll take the card first. What item is this again? 6? Right, let's take the card and then we'll go to questions and comments. Noel Fleming.
Good afternoon, council members. I'm Noelle Fleming. I'm Director of Legislative and Legal Affairs for Central City Association. I also happen to be one of the 21 advisors that sits on the Zoning Advisory. I just wanted to point out that, cities across the nation are initiating zoning code reform efforts to undo a lot of the automobile-era policies that promoted sprawl and reduce walkability and cause flight out of our central business districts. We're in the position now of facing this issue as well. I think we've made a lot of big strides adopting smart growth policies to leverage our public investments in transportation, but we still have a long way to go. This zoning code reform is our opportunity to flip our post-World War II era code on its head and to design a new system from scratch that gives us the innovative tools to best articulate desired land use patterns. This must go hand in hand with development reform efforts. The Zoning Code Evaluation Report does an excellent job laying out our challenges and priorities. I'd urge you today to move forward with this report so we can press on with this challenge. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Mr. Englander?
Yeah, I just wanted to actually more comment than question. Tom, thank you, as well as the entire committee, the folks that have really been engaged in this. We have a daunting web of a bloated bureaucracy and antiquated processes, and trying to figure out in each and every parcel what can or can't be done. Just the hundreds of zones, equating to thousands of zones, depending on all the overlays that you talked about, is a nightmare for not just planners, you referred to planners, but the entire community, all of our constituencies, neighborhood councils, communities, and it's so difficult to deal with this and so hard to go through and find things online, easily accessible. This is a huge undertaking. The fact that you've gone out there and had all of these meetings, the fact that we've had over 500 people show up and participate, and this is just the beginning of the process, to lay out what is essentially just a roadmap and a blueprint and moving forward to get us out of this cutting-edge 1984 technology. I want to compliment you and also our general manager for doing just a Herculean task and getting your arms around what needs to be done to move this forward. It's so overdue. And as you know, I've been personally a proponent in trying to streamline, and an advocate to streamline this process and get a collaborative approach together, getting departments to communicate and collaborate with the community. And one of the biggest hurdles, and what hurts us so often, is the bureaucracy and how difficult it is to navigate these different interpretations, not for developers, but what I look for is for businesses, for small and local businesses to either locate here or expand, things that they want to do, which are the backbone of our city, financially and otherwise. And as we see and wearing different hats from public safety on the other committee that I'm on, as well as vice chair of budget, everything really revolves around revenue coming into the city to ensure that we can provide quality services, to pave our streets, to fix our infrastructure, to provide public safety. And it's very difficult to get things moving here, to keep business here, to retain them, to attract them, and get people to invest here locally because this process is so out of date. And that's just the beginning of the process. Once you're in it, that's a whole nother nightmare. And so I really applaud your efforts. It's critically important. I also want to thank the chairman of this committee because Councilman Huizar has been focused on this since he took the chairmanship. He's been advocating this from day one and pushing it. It was stuck here for a long time in conversation, quite frankly, and trying to figure out what we're going to do. It takes the leadership of a chairman to get that going, along with the efforts of staff and the department. And so I really want to applaud this committee, Mr. Huizar, you and your staff and all the work. And again, this is only the beginning. It would be great, and I think we have a great story to tell, that this is not only off the ground, but the plane's being built and it's taking off. And hopefully we can get the buy-in from the rest of the council to land this thing at the right time. And I would ask if hopefully it's appropriate to move this not for a vote, because I think it's premature and I don't know that we need one. This is just an update. But at a minimum, to get the discussion going and inform the rest of our colleagues on what's taken place here and what's happening, because this is a dramatic change and it's a positive one, to bring this to the council just for an update to the council and then to come back here. So just be scheduled for an update so the council can hear this. And we've had 500 people citywide weigh in on this. It would be awesome for you to present this as the chair, along with the planning staff and the general manager, to present this to council in the very near future. Move this to council as an update and then bring it back here. Keep it in this committee. And I don't know that would require any particular vote, but I think it's something we should share citywide and certainly with all of our colleagues. And just wanted to thank you again.
Yes, no, thank you very much, Mr. Englander. And if we move it to council, it's more of an update. It's a presentation, correct? And then that will come back. What's the next step after that? When will we continuously monitor this and see where we're at? What would be your thoughts on that?
Well, we've promised to come back every quarter.
Every quarter, so
we're
the next time would be a
we're going to come
report.
regardless every quarter, and then we have the next big deliverable is the downtown code next year.
Okay, good. Any
I
questions?
think it's important that we think more expansive about downtown and the greater downtown area. And I think it's important both for the TFARs, and I think it's important both for all the other policies that are suggested, the code changes that are to no disagreement about creating more density. This will be around the entire area. And if we're going to have a better about that, the same applies with respect to hotels and to economic development in the area. So I'm interested in that. I'd like to see us think boldly and more expansively about that. If you want to get people out of cars, you want people to ride bikes, you want them to be pedestrians, they can't live 20, 30 miles away from the jobs. It just doesn't work. Housing where jobs are, and the way to do that is to be able to do that. Incredible disposition in the city where people do not want change in their neighborhoods. And so we have to take advantage of the places where we can create change, and that is in the... To talk about how you see this, using this for a tool for economic development, particularly since the demise of the...
Okay, well, in several areas, it could help economic development. One is that we are going to be, separate from this, incorporating the CRA regulations into our zoning code. Since we are the legacy department, we are taking over those functions. So we'll be incorporating CRA guidelines into our zoning code. But I think, as Councilman Englander said, we're going to have a much easier zoning code to understand for small businesses to open up. And we're also have a section, Chapter 5, I went over, well, barely, but very briefly, on jobs and innovation, where we hope to strengthen our manufacturing zones, and also we're talking about industrial sanctuaries where they can't be, these areas can't be infringed upon by other uses. So I think that will be really helpful. But I think the biggest part is that if we have a code that's easy to understand, we're going to attract more businesses here.
Okay. Specific personal basis, my district is in some respects wedged between and Koreatown, and west of downtown.
Well, the Recode project is not going to be rezoning any parts of the city, so that's really still going to be left up to the community plan update. So we happen to be doing this in tandem with Central City North, and with Boyle Heights. So even though Recode's not tackling that as a rezoning, those community plans are working with us, so we'll have better tools for them. As far as the specific plans go, we are not going to be changing any of those through any of this process. Those will remain intact. If at some point in the future the community planners in the neighborhoods think that there are better tool options in our citywide zoning code, we could replace them, but that's really not proposed at the time. As far as the supplemental use districts go, those are being looked at, and those are part of the flattening and the bridge zone, so we will be condensing and reviewing all of those regulations to see where there is quite often redundancy. We're going to be creating zones, and whatever is on the ground today will be carried over in a bridge zone to what this new code will implement tomorrow. If there is something inaccurate or incorrect about the zone, it will stay that way until we do your community plan update.
If I may, Tom, so Councilman, I think the short answer to your question is in order to address the kind of issues you see in your district and Pico Union and those areas that are underserved, is we need to launch a community plan program. We can work with you offline on identifying funding like we had in prior years with Councilman Weezar for his district. We had hoped that with the event center, when it was still a plan that was moving forward, we had negotiated in the development agreement some funding to be able to do some planning work, especially along the Olympic corridor. We thought there were some really good opportunities there, and we share your vision to want to do some work in that area. So if we can start to identify funding either through private development and development agreements in the area, or perhaps TFAR or general fund, we'd be happy to sit down with you and try to create a strategy to address those concerns I know you care so much about.
Modernize and to have these two.
Well, we're working closely with the Build LA project, so that's a really another huge initiative the city's taking, and we're hoping that our web-based zoning code will help out a lot. And we also have a technical advisory committee that's helping oversee this project, and of course on there, a key player is the Department of Building and Safety. And it's other departments to make sure that we are keeping the integrity of the whole municipal code intact and not creating redundancies or inaccuracies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is the clerk here? If we were to move this or have it in council, what would be the correct direction from this committee to make that possible so we could hear this in council?
The committee has two options. The committee can and note and file the status report and schedule it in council, and also with an additional recommendation for planning to come back on a quarterly basis for the future, or this item can be kept in committee and a coordination with the council president to have a special presentation in council for the planning department to update the entire council on the progress of this project. So there are two options.
Yeah. The first one involved note and filing this?
Yes, as in this status report, you can note and file and move it to council and schedule it that way, or you can keep this item in committee and coordinate with the council president to have a special presentation for planning to come into council and update the entire council on this project.
Okay, so why don't we do this? Why don't we continue this for the next quarterly report, and then we will work with the council president's office to direct the planning department to work with my office to work with the president's office to present a special presentation to the full council on the status of this project.
If that's the motion, I'll second that. And I think we should do that by motion so we can codify that as a vote.
Yeah.
That we're actually taking that action to send it to council as an update, but keep the file here and come back more. as what the chairman suggested.
Yes.
Yes, that would be the official action.
My city attorney and my Go Bears guy, colleague from Berkeley, agree. Do we always back each other up as Bears?
Always.
We're not USC, huh? The USC people always back each other up, huh?
I get allergies.
Okay, that'll be the action of this committee.
Fight on. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. That will be the order, and my office, along with the planning department and council president's office, will work to make a special presentation in council. Any other items on this agenda?
Public comment.
This meeting
Council.
is adjourned.
I don't know if there's public comment.
There's no public
Okay.
comment. Thank you.